Alright, here we go. Welcome back to the channel. This is Luke with Luke F1 Fantasy. First and last video of the week. This is my Monza preview, my team selection. We're going to dip into a little bit of Zandvoort reaction. I have managed to avoid looking at my score and rank since Sunday, and it's now Wednesday afternoon that I am recording. But you know what? It is time to roll with it. And so we have the pleasure of looking at my team and rank together. And like I said, I've avoided everything, so I really don't know where I sit. I think mentally my team score is about 150 or thereabouts. As a little recap, as you can see on screen, I had the Triple McLaren Triple Aston build, which I felt really good with going into the deadline. Really liked that Norris was showing great form in the free practices. I love the fact of putting the 2x on him. Was not expecting the Lance Stroll no time set in Q1, so that really put a damper on things. But having him qualify 20th in a car like Aston, even though Zandvoort is a bit of a low overtake trap, I thought that they would maybe get him some strategy advantages, put him on different tyre sets. So I knew that some of those were going to work out, but without further ado, let's see where we are. So I'm in my race review right now, completed, and yeah, as expected, a bit of a supersonic crash, a 162 points to finish the week. So this team with the Triple McLaren Triple Aston really didn't give me the rock and roll star that I was looking for. But that is the nature of the game. Now, the all-important question, where did that drop me in my rank? So this is all live, guys. I am recording this live reaction as I log in. Here we go, Global League standings, and yeah, we've seen a red arrow again. My T1 rank is 1547, a drop of about 500 places for me, and another red arrow. So I am trending the wrong way. I think I have been trending the wrong way since, I don't know, Canada maybe. The 500 drop, I guess that isn't too much. Got fortunate a little bit with that. Then probably the reason for that is that prior to the week going into it, Ferrari were 98% owned as a second constructor. Going into after the deadline, I believe that dropped to about 25%, and Aston had dropped 50% up to about 58% ownership. So I knew by having the Aston build, having the Norris, that I'm in the bigger boat at this point, so anything that kind of went wrong, I would be in that same boat. And then you had the other sort of majority team with the 25% Ferrari ownership, but the Aston teams definitely came off a little bit worse. So the big winners this week were really those teams that perhaps went with a Mercedes build, perhaps those that went with the Triple McLaren Triple Aston build, and went with the autopilot over the 3X. So autopilot was definitely the play to make, and that was going to be the one that would save you. So good job there. And so where did it all go wrong? As we've said, it's the Norris DNF with the 2X that really put a damper on this team. That really gave it that supersonic crash, as I was saying. But everything else in that team seemed to do all right. Alonso scored well with a 13-pointer. We had Lance Stroll scoring well with 21 points. We had Aston Martin coming out as being the fourth best constructor on that week at 41. So a little less than I predicted. I predicted they would probably get into the third best constructor, but I had them scoring about 40-ish points. Piastri, again, solidly doing well with a 45-pointer, but didn't have my 2X on him. Bortoleto probably laying the team down with his 0 points, but did enough to get the 0.6. So all in all, saw a budget increase of 2.9 million, with 1.8 million of that just coming from Aston Martin assets alone. Another week where there's been some good decisions, but then just some very bad luck in terms of the outcome, which again, the second time that I've owned Lando Norris since the sort of the opening couple of weekends. But since Canada had him in, and then now I've just picked up both his DNFs this week on a 2X week. So Lando has really robbed my team of about 100, 110 points. So I'd be a lot higher if it wasn't for Lando decisions in my team. But we can't look back in anger for too much longer. We have another race quickly around the corner. And is it time to push the gas panic button? We will see. But ultimately, this is just a game in fantasy. You can't predict DNFs. But I still maintain it to this day. The penalties are brutal. -20 for a DNF. That's just not strategy. It's just bad luck tax. I would take a -5. I could live with a -10. Because right now, one random blown engine, one slight nudge from behind, and your team is just buried. And after all, it's just fantasy, so it doesn't need to really be that cruel. But whatever. Here's the thing. No matter how bad it feels in F1 Fantasy, we can't put all our eggs in one basket. My week can get destroyed in multiple different ways between EPL and NFL and F1 Fantasy. So if all else fails, you've got the other two to back up to hopefully give you a good week and erase a lot of last week's pain. But we have to look forward to the great master plan now in order to figure out what to do with this team. So looking into it, where I can see the adjustments being need to made is perhaps I'm looking at Lando as being someone that would move out of my team. Likely to see a budget decrease this week, so could be someone that I'd put a question mark over. And then you've got Piastri. He's looking like our Wonderwall right now. It just has to be part of the lineup. And then Alonso, Bortoleto, and Stroll. Definitely the two Aston Martins at a 13-pointer and over a 20-pointer for Lance Stroll. That would put them right in the mix for budget increases for another week or two. And Aston have looked good. They probably do tend to give themselves favourable setups in qualifying, in free practice, I should say. That maybe over-exaggerates their performance, but they are there or thereabouts in this midfield battle. And with Ferrari and Mercedes tend to still have their weekly slip-ups, including Red Bull, then Aston Martin, again, one of those prime B-tier teams that can jump into that spot for getting the highest points, or third or fourth highest points for that week. Okay, so all the roads we have to walk are always winding to the budget builder. So let's bring that up here. It's A-tier constructors, pretty simple at the top. Piastri, 22 points for a 0.3. He definitely has to be in your team. No issues to take him out there. Russell jumping into that second best A-tier constructor possibility, 25 points for a 0.3, which Russell, if he can get a P3, P4 with a good quality, definitely in his realm of possibilities. But not much budget building possibilities from any of the other assets at this moment in time. But they are, so to say, better drivers and better cars in the game. So when we are thinking about, there will be a time, and it may be this week, where the master plan shifts to points over budget. So look out for good performances from Leclerc and Hamilton this weekend, especially with Monza being a home race for Ferrari. Verstappen, if you trust him. Norris, if he's in your team. We'll come back to those later. So looking at our Tier B, well, we have Isaac Hadjar leading the way at needing -16 for a 0.6 price increase. Coming off a huge performance with 33 points in Zandvoort. And he's electric. There's no denying that in that Red Bull car. Very well balanced in that car. We have Gabby Bortoleto needing a -5 for a 0.6. Again, a big transfer in for all the teams last week. He did score 0 points in Zandvoort. This will be the last week that he holds the 24-pointer from Hungary on his lineup. So Bortoleto probably was like a one-week wonder for now. And we'll see how his performance goes in Monza. Alonso, 0 points for a 0.6. Stroll above 3 points for 0.6. Both the Aston Martin boys looking like they will continue to have brighter days going forward. And Alex Albon, 27 points in the Williams. Now, we did speak about Williams being a car that typically does well around, also a car that typically does well around Monza. So Albon's putting himself right in the mix for a big transfer in this week, with needing only 4 points for 0.6. Then we have Liam Lawson now getting into the little bit of the difficult, the red shadings. Lawson needing 9 points for over a 0.6. Shout out Colapinto with 11 points. He's the only 4.5 million asset in the game. Needs 10 points to see an increase massively though. Needs to see an increase of... Colapinto needs to score 10 points for 0.6, 6 points for 0.2. Alpine, Colapinto not looking like the best car on the track. Don't even know how he got 11 points this week, but And as the only 4.5 million asset in the game, for those of you looking with lower budgets, those of you looking to move into your 4A lineups, Colapinto maybe that you could look to for a week or two. And we have Ocon at 15 points in Zandvoort, needing 11 points for a 0.6 increase. Now, both drivers here, and I'll add Ollie Behrman to this slide, who also scored a 27-pointer, 18 points now needed for a 0.6. He was a big transfer out for our teams after his DNF in the last race out, but really came to the forefront and showed us what he could. But he again has put himself back into the mix for a driver that we would consider. Now, the budget builder would say we don't put him in. 27 points in his last race out, and he still received a 0.2 million. Again, goes to highlight the brutal punishment of what a simple DNF can do to our teams. But that 27 pointer could be very useful in one race from now, if not this race, the next race. Again, a very interesting targets. Both of the Haas drivers for me are both interesting targets because they don't look as if they're going to give you budget. But with 9 races left, maybe we're looking at a sense of moving into more points over budget build. And Haas, again, being Ferrari influence in their car setup, in their power, that potentially looking at Haas as being one of the strongest midfield teams this week. Hulkenberg now sitting at 14 points to get a 0.6 increase. So once a mainstay in our teams now, I think his value is just peaking at that high 9s, early 10s level. So if you still have anything in your team, as you can see, there's a lot of good options that are way cheaper at this moment in time for Hulkenberg. So looking like a big transfer out. Sainz, every time we think Sainz is going to come into our team, he has a really low performance that just puts some pause. So a 1-pointer to go with his 6 in Hungary, now needing 9 points for a 0.2 and 14 for a 0.6. Sainz, I don't know if you're going to be part of the master plan. I don't think you're going to be the one that saves me this week. And then looking into our constructors, McLaren leading the way, Mercedes and Red Bull if you fancy that alternative. But Ferrari now needing 74 points. And again, do you take them for budget or do you take them for points this weekend? Or do you just not take them because you're so burned by this week that just happened? And Tier Bs, Aston painfully, regrettably leading the way at over minus 43 for a 0.6. And so may still be part of our decisions lineups depending on how your free transfers, if you're wildcard and things like that, be having those. And then shout out to Racing Bull and Kick for all that kind of stuff that we have going. So we may have been feeling supersonic, but give me a gin and tonic. We can now look into our team selections with all the information having been reviewed. So yeah, bringing up the team again. What can we say then? So Lando, yes, could be a transfer out. But outside of that, there is good potential in points and budget from all of these guys once again. Maybe a small move to make would be to, if I really wanted to keep the structure of the team, the triple up, maybe moving the Bortoletto out for Isaac Hadjar, getting that almost certain price guarantee. The Red Bull car still maybe looking on par, if not slightly better than the Kick at this time of the year. And so banking on the fact that Hadjar does really do well in qualifying, he can have a good race. It's crazy to think after the disaster of the weekend that I could be thinking about just using one transfer and rolling and moving on with that. As I sit here on a Wednesday afternoon sort of recording, I can still see benefits in this team. I can still see a chance of redemption. Because reality is Lando, he's not going to DNF every race. He definitely isn't going to be in my team for a budget perspective, but I don't pick Lando Norris for budget. I pick Lando Norris because I think he can win the race and I think he can get a bonus points of either a fastest lap or a driver of the day and have him as a 2x differential. It still would be the main differential to a PS3 with a McLaren Ferrari or a PS3 McLaren Mercedes build. We've had a little time to wake up and now we are back to almost like running it back with the same team here. So that could be a one transfer move. There could be some alternatives where I look to move out Lance Stroll if I want to just take out a little bit of stocks in Aston Martin just to spread things out a little bit. Maybe that could look like a jump into one of the Haas assets from a points perspective, an Ocon or a Behrman. Behrman could be quietly looking into our teams for next week and taking advantage of that 27 pointer that he had, looking more of that points can we capture points over budget at this point? I don't mind the look of those teams while still maintaining the Lando, Aston Martin structure and working within the constraints of 2 transfers. Some might say going back to the original template lineup might be the way to go, but maybe it's a little bit of an alternative template and looking ahead to maybe future 4A builds. And that would be looking at dropping my constructor down to have to be taking out a Lando to be able to afford this, but looking at putting in either a Mercedes or a Ferrari again, leaving me with a lot of cash in the bank, that is to be said. But with this type of deal, I can afford to get in the Alex Albon type deal. This is also so far a 2 transfer move. A team lineup like this is really banking on the fact that you don't think Ferrari is going to be strong around Monza, or you're just too annoyed by the double DNF, or perhaps you went with this kind of alternative strategy. There are a lot of good teams to like this week, to be honest with you, even within the 2 transfer strategy. A lot of people should have a budget of around this to be able to afford this. Obviously, if you don't have the budget for that, you still have guys like Liam Lawson that you can put in that still would be beneficial from points potential and budget. Even going with a double up of a Red Bull may even be a consideration for some people as well. But there is lots of budget to play with when we have a lot of drivers that are still within this B tiers that have a good chance of improving. And that is something to consider when we go over to the F1 Fantasy Tools statistics and we look into just how good did the B tier assets perform this week. When we look at it, and I summarize sort of the price changes, and what we saw is that we had 6 assets in the Netherlands that had increased by 0.6. We had Lance Stroll, we had Alex Albon, we had Isaac Hadjar, we had Alonso, we had Bortoleto, and we had Lawson. Now going into the week, we looked at Lawson and Bortoleto being slam dunks. They got that. Alonso and Stroll picked up the next tier. They got that. But there was 2 that was off our radar, but they came to fruition, and that is Alex Albon and Isaac Hadjar. And 6 is the most this year. And so we've had weeks where there's been 5 assets that have increased by 0.6, more often 4. So the first time that 6 has happened. And even if we just look at the average race, like we saw an average increase of 1.8 over the course of the race, as opposed to if you look at a lot of these other races, Australia started off with a minus 3.2 decrease. We had even Saudi Arabia with a minus 3.1. So the majority of the season on a given race weekend, when you take the average of budget, lost and gains across all the drivers, Netherlands is a complete and utter outlier. And there is just no other way to say that. Bound with all the weight of all the words that I'm trying to say, Netherlands was a complete and utter outlier in terms of everything that happened. And the likelihood of that happening again, it's probably closer to 0 than it is 100. So you and I, we're going to live forever, and we just got to make some better. I am fortunate to still have my wild card available, and there are considerations of do I pull the plug on that right now. It would be tough to say yes to that because there's not much to force me off the move other than free practice rules. I'm not being dictated by the budget builder as much because I've got a lot of the favorable assets. I still think that the second constructor choice is going to be a battle each and every week from now on. It could be an A-tier constructor like a Mercedes or Ferrari. It could be a B-tier. And so I am, certainly leaning towards not playing the wild card. It would just be playing the wild card for me at this point would just be trying to get all the cheaper assets in to move quite quickly to a 4A, or maybe even get to a 4A now. I could probably look at getting in. I still want to be able to get in people like a Isaac Hadjar at quite cheap. Maybe I'm taking away a Lance Stroll. I'm putting in a Liam Lawson for a week, which is going to leave me with 32.5. I take out Aston and put back in one of my premium constructors, and then I'm in this position where I can play a 4A. Don't even know if we can call it a light or heavy at this point, with Mercedes, Ferrari not really showing which one can be which. But yeah, this kind of gets me into a 4A lineup with 3 really good B tier assets to use. So Wildcard could be on the cards to get into this one, and then this will be my almost set and forget team for the rest of the year, with some minor changes here or there with the B tiers, maybe swapping the constructors, but I'll be less and less flexible. I'll end up getting less and less flexibility with that, as not having the wild card and not having the free transfers too. So there's a lot to think about. The 4A lineups does work if you can really believe that the second constructor that you've picked is going to be one of Ferrari or Mercedes, and that you can run that. Otherwise, it's still looking like it may be a good play to even just stick with my current plan. Even just making one transfer, getting in Isaac Hadjar, sticking with Lando 2X, and just believing that the fantasy gods will eventually have some good luck to fortune and favour on my side. So that's just what we might have to do. Just dust ourselves off. We go again, and we got to chase that champagne supernova moment when it all comes together and we can all sit here with huge cheers. So don't go away. Stay in the comments. Drop your scores, your bad beats, and who do you think you're backing for the next race? And let me know your thoughts on the points versus budget strategy. Are you ready to move there? Do we leave it another 1 or 2 weeks? Thank you guys for subscribing. Thanks for watching. You all are my F1 fantasy wonder wall that I could lean on for support. Like I said, reminder, this is my last video of the week. I am going away to the Oasis concert in LA, if you haven't already figured that out by this video. So I'll be back following week with a review of the Italian Monza Grand Prix. We'll see how our teams did. So good luck with your team choices. Stay safe out there. Don't worry, be happy, and we will catch you on the next one.